Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show. I'm your host, Mary Czarnecki, and today I am so excited to introduce you to my special guest, Kevin Perlmutter. If you don't know Kevin, he is the chief strategist and founder of Limbic Brand Evolution. It's a brand strategy and neuromarketing consultancy, which puts emotional insight at the center of how brands attract and retain customers. And today we're going to be digging into some of those exact things, why and how to connect emotionally with people. And he's going to also give us the insider look to his book, Brand Desire. So welcome, Kevin. So happy to have you here on the show.
I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you today, Mary.
Thanks. And I know there are some people watching this, maybe even specifically because you're the guest today, but I know some people may be meeting you for the first time. So can you give just a quick introduction to the kind of work you do and the problems that you solve?
Absolutely. I am a non-traditional brand strategist. I came from a world of brand consulting where I started to recognize a few years back that things were missing. You ever have one of those light bulb moments where you just recognize, wait a minute, something's not right here. And what I recognized and realized about 6, 7 years ago was that understanding how the brain works and behavioral science was missing from most brand strategy work that I've been a part of and that most people are currently conducting either on the consulting side or as brand leaders. I had an opportunity to work with some people who I now affectionately refer to as my behavioral science mentors, who worked at a neuroscience-based research company where we created a customized collaborative research capability for my last company that I worked for. And we won some awards and did an amazing amount of work and found some unique correlations between how much our brain interprets information and feels things and how that correlates at a high level to our conscious thoughts and behaviors. And I'm like, I've got to do something with this. So in 2019, I created Limbic Sparks brand strategy, which puts emotional insight at the center of how brands attract and retain customers. And I started working with clients. A couple of years ago, I started writing a book, and Brand Desire published just a few months ago.
I can't wait to dig into some of the things that you share inside Brand Desire, because I know that's one of the things that you and I both love talking about is, okay, why does the brain actually do that? Like, how do we need to take this into account, not just fall into some of this is how we've always done it in marketing. So we don't want to fall into those traps.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's just start there. But I think both of us have this kind of passion for understanding the science and the art of marketing. But when you think about traditional brand strategy, what's wrong? What's broken in traditional brand strategy that you wish people would notice and fix?
Haven't thought about it much. No, there are three things. There are three things that I'll use to summarize what's wrong with traditional brand strategy. One is that it's stuck in the persuasion era. This is a time in the world when it was before the internet, it was before social media, before online customer reviews, when the primary forms of marketing was traditional advertising, TV, print, out of home, and ideas like unique selling proposition and proof points and reasons to believe got etched in our brains and etched in the industry's way of working. And if you think about those terms, if you think about unique selling proposition and proof points and reasons to believe, you are selling, you are trying to persuade people of something. So one of the challenges with traditional brand strategy is it's stuck in an old era and it's using language that's steering us down the path of selling, not understanding customers and solving for them. The second thing that I think about a lot is that people care about their own motivations a lot more than they care about what your company is all about. And they certainly don't care about your why if it's not relevant to them. And this obsession with brand leaders finding their brand's why without much regard for understanding their who is sending them down the wrong path. It's creating a half-baked brand strategy. It's causing them to stand up on a table and tell everyone how wonderful they are and what they care about and what they're passionate about and why they're doing it. And if you're not spending an equal amount of time understanding who your customers are and what they care about and what they need, want, and desire in their life with or without your brand, you're going to be missing the mark. You're going to be firing over their heads, and it's not going to be relevant. And the third thing that I think is wrong with traditional brand strategy is that there's not enough time spent getting back to this idea of understanding your who. There's not enough time spent understanding customers, and they hold all the insight and information as to what makes your brand amazing. Customers know more about why they choose your brand than you do. And that's gold that you can use for getting new customers who want to feel the exact same things that your current customers are feeling. And most of the reasons why people choose brands relate to how it makes them feel, not the product and service features that you are trying to persuade people to be interested in.
I think there's so much richness in what you just said. So I want to pull on a couple of the threads because, first of all, I hope, by the way, whoever's watching and listening to this, wherever you're joining us from today, grab those sticky notes. Make sure you've got those out because Kevin's going to be dropping some knowledge bombs on you today. So one of the things that you mentioned was this idea about, yes, the who is the key, right? That if you're just talking about why us, like why are we so special, the why behind our brand, it's half baked and you're missing the key engagement factor, which is, look, you can have the best vision of yourself and why you think your product or service is important, but if there's no one out there buying it, if there's no one that you're resonating with, then you don't have a business.
Yeah.
And I think both you and I have probably been in client situations, consulting situations where, I don't know about you, but I've been sitting on the side of the table when I'm in the onboarding, learning about their business phase, and they'll be telling me all the special things about them. And I keep asking, but what's the problem you solve? Or who are you helping and what are you helping them with? And they're like, but we have this feature and we have this thing. And right. Have you found yourself in that? And like, how do you subtly do that? Because sometimes I feel like the third time I ask, but why are they going to care? They start to look at me like, we just told you because we have this button, bell, switch, or lever.
The way I solve for that is a couple of things. So I complained in the answer to the other question about the challenges with persuasion-based marketing and strategy and the use of old language. One of the ways I solve for that is by introducing new language which requires a new way of thinking. And there are two pieces that I introduce that make it a requirement that we think about things differently and that we gather insights that actually help us act differently. So one of them is something that doesn't exist in traditional brand strategy, which is part of insights discovery, which is uncovering what I call the shared emotional motivation. I am certainly interested in understanding everything that you just said our clients want to share with us about their brand. That is super important. I want to understand. I'm not saying I don't want to understand their why. Sure, I'll understand their why. I want to understand what they're great at. I want to understand what they care about. I really want to understand what a brand is doing in the world to make people's lives better and why they strive to continue doing that every day. That's incredibly important insight that I need to have. But in and of itself, it's only half the story. The other half of the story is what people are interested in doing in their life. What are they challenged by? What are they trying to achieve? They are trying to overcome challenges, be happier, more successful, whether it's in personal life or work. And I want to understand what's going on in their lives. What's their motivation? And if I could understand their motivation and the brand's motivation, then I can get to what I call a shared emotional motivation. And the shared emotional motivation is what the brand and the customer are each trying to achieve individually and with each other. And that is an insight. That's not a tagline. That is an insight. So for instance, I work with there are 6 case study chapters in the book. And one of them is for a company that is a SaaS-based supply chain management software company. They help companies with huge warehouses, thousands and thousands of SKUs, multiple locations, seasonal variability, whatever it is. They help them figure out accurate inventory levels because if your inventory levels are not right, you're spending too much on inventory or you're out of stock. And that's a problem for the financials of the company and the customer experience. So this company has a software platform that does this incredibly well with a huge confidence level. And they are in the world to help companies be more precise, to have precise levels of inventory at all times. And it turns out their customers want exactly the same thing. So if we start with that level of information, this is all about helping people be more precise. We're getting at a shared emotional motivation that becomes the foundation for the brand strategy. Now we get to the brand strategy, and there's another definition that I've reinvented, which is rooted in behavioral science, which is the brand idea or the tagline. There's a free-for-all of brand ideas and taglines in the world, and a lot of them are about us statements.
Yeah.
They're about the company. We do this, we do that. There's not a lot of for you in a lot of those taglines and those brand ideas, but I've created a definition, a behavioral science rooted definition of a brand idea, which is that it must be a compelling brand benefit and invitation. If it's not a compelling brand benefit and invitation, it doesn't qualify as what I call a Limbic Sparks brand idea. And the way you get to a compelling brand benefit and invitation is if you understand that shared emotional motivation, because it's what you're able to deliver on and it's what people need, want, and desire in their world. And the new idea for a tagline can actually invite them into that experience. It'll help them feel like, wow, they get me. So for this software company, we heard all kinds of insights around the emotional stress that people working in those jobs go through. Because when you're responsible for thousands of SKUs and having accurate inventory levels, no matter how good you are at your job, there's a good chance you're going to be wrong often enough where it's a problem in certain situations. And nobody wants, we heard one customer, and by the way, in every one of these jobs, I speak with customers and read reviews or read reviews. In this case, it was both. And we looked at sentiment analysis and we looked at what was going on. And we heard from customers like, before this software platform, I was the guy who was always in trouble at work. Now I'm the hero with the accurate information. So we started to recognize the way this company, this software platform makes them feel and the benefits that are offered that cause that. And we went from a brand idea before I arrived, which was we put you at the center of supply chain success, to be supply chain invincible.
Mhm.
Be supply chain invincible is the brand benefit and invitation that this company now hangs their hat on to let people know that if you want to be supply chain invincible, if you want to feel invincible at work, if you want to have accurate inventory levels at a 95+% confidence level, if you want to eliminate guesswork, if you want to maximize inventory performance, if you want to have people who are going to help you use the software whenever you need their support, this is the company that's going to help you get there. So
Well,
we
and then they
understood
sound
these.
different, right? I mean,
Sorry?
and then they sound different. I mean, that's such
Absolutely, because there are 10, 15 other competitors who have software platforms in this space that aren't them with some of the same bells and whistles. But this company, we spoke to their customers. We reviewed, I analyzed with the support of one of my team members. I analyzed 77 customer reviews that had a 4.7 out of 5 rating. Understand why it had such a high rating. 25% of them mentioned supply chain coaches, what they call their lifeline service. 25% of them of those reviews mentioned that service as a key differentiator, and it wasn't part of any question. They volunteered that information. So we knew that was driving a lot of emotional positivity and as well as differentiating. And so this is what it's all about. It's the difference between traditional brand strategy and what I'm talking about is deeply understanding what makes your customers tick and why they choose your brand. Because if you can find out why they're choosing your brand, and by the way, it's always going to be an emotional benefit, not a feature. If you can find out those reasons, you could make an assumption that there are other people out there who want those same benefits, and you can hang your hat on those benefits to attract people to the brand.
I just think that's so powerful, but it brings together something that, like you said, they might already be talking about, right? The half of what makes us special. Why are we passionate about what we do? That's great. But that missing piece that you're really shining the light on is that shared emotional connection, because then all of a sudden it brings meaning to what it is you're creating as a
Yeah.
product or service. Now, I love that case study that you bring up because I think a lot of the the people I've heard from our community who listen to the show, who I work with in my speaking and workshops, I have worked with both B2C and
Yep.
B2B2C. And I think a lot of times, at least when I'm talking to some of the B2B folks that I work with, there can be this feeling that, oh, my buyer is a technical buyer and they need the features first, that they don't make emotional decisions. Now, I obviously the case study that you just shared proves that's not the case. People do
Yeah.
connect even emotionally. So do you get into that in brand desire? What do you share with us in that?
I do. I do. I share a lot of misconceptions that are out there about that exist. In fact, one of the ways that I fed some insight into brand desire beyond what I've created in my client case studies is for a period of for 3 or so years, I had a podcast where I was interviewing brand leaders. And I would always ask them at the end of each episode the same questions. And one of them was, why do you feel some brand leaders are ignoring or under leveraging the power of emotion and emotional insights? And I got a lot of answers, and I catalog a bunch of them in chapter one. And they were things like, we're in a business setting and people are really focused on the numbers. Some B2B company leaders are like, oh, we're a serious business. We have business customers. We don't want our brand to be emotional. And there are misconceptions about emotion. So like the old way of emotion, it's still very current and it works in some product categories, but it's not about advertising being funny or sentimental or using fear tactics, which is a one way of doing things that I don't love. It's not about, that's not what we mean by emotion. I'm trying to change the way people think about emotion. It's not about your brand being emotional. It's not about, some people will say, what emotion should we stand for? You're standing for an emotion. You're addressing the emotional needs, wants, and desires and motivations of the people who you're trying to reach. It's emotional insights is about understanding people's emotional motivations. The definition of emotional motivations are the drivers of our decisions and behaviors. This is what emotional motivation is about. So if you can understand the drivers of people's decisions and behaviors, then you can be sure that your brand messaging and brand aesthetic and brand experience feels like it was designed with those people in mind. And again, it's not about being inauthentic. It's not about understanding what they need, want, and desire and driving in that direction. In fact, I have a whole conversation. I have a whole section of the book that talks about my feelings about competitive audits. And while we need to have a competitive audit to understand the language of the category so we can either assimilate or be different where necessary, and to be sure that we're not copying somebody else's positioning statement. The old way of doing competitive reviews is to have a 2 by 2 of positioning territories and to find the white space and say, hey, let's go over there. And it's not about that. It can't be about finding the white space and hoping that you can fill that void with a positioning nobody else is using. You're much better off understanding what your unique positioning is through the eyes of your customers who have experienced it and will feed back to you what makes you different and special. And then leading into that wherever it lands on the 2 by 2. Because if you're going to try and fill a positioning territory that happens to be vacant, A, you don't know if anybody wants that positioning territory, if it's meaningful. And even worse, you don't know if you can authentically deliver on that promise. You don't, your brand is, when I'm working with my clients, I'm helping them identify what already makes them special and then emphasizing those points as the brand benefits, not moving in some aspirational direction that they may or may not be able to fulfill. So it's those kinds of things that I help my clients overcome are these misconceptions about how to stand out and be different, about what emotional insights and motivations are, and that it's not about your brand being emotional. It's these types of things. And the honest truth is it's not really a hard sell. Once people hear it, they're like, oh, that makes tremendous sense. That's odd. Why didn't we think of that? I don't know, but here we are, and let's move forward in this direction, and it gets a really good reception.
No, I love that. And I think people do need that service, right? That power that you bring to them to have the outside perspective because we're so close to our own thing. We're trying to get business done every day.
Yeah.
We don't always have the opportunity to step back and ask, are we thinking about this the right way?
And that goes for anyone in business or even us as entrepreneurs. I'll tell you, every time I've done something big or was about to launch something new, and that includes launching my business, that includes writing the book, that includes the topic for an online course that I'm creating right now, and which is a slightly different skew than the book. And I have conversations with people who know me, and I have I call them up and I set up meetings and I go through a list of questions and I say, what is it about what I do that's what makes what I do different than what people who do similar things to me do? There are other questions as well, but you need to really understand the outside perspective. And sometimes you can ask those questions yourself. Sometimes you can hire someone to do it for you. Sometimes you can scour reviews and see what people are saying without having to talk to them. There are lots of different ways to get at this information, but you need to know what people from the outside are feeling and perceiving. And that gives you a lot of insight as to how you can lean into what makes you different.
I think that's such a good reminder. So whoever needed to hear that today, make sure you wrote that down. All right. I do have one more question since you brought up writing the book and asking your trusted advisors what makes you different. Why did you write the book? Obviously, there's so much great knowledge that you poured into that. And I know that writing a book takes energy too. So
It
what was
does.
your motivation? What made you decide, okay, this is something that I need to do?
Throughout like the last half of my career, last 15, 20 years or whatever it's been, I've I've always enjoyed being on the what I call the edge of a frontier. So I left advertising and joined one of the largest global brand consultancies, and I created their first ever global customer experience practice. I left that organization and went to a sonic branding music studio, and I hooked up with my behavioral science mentors, and we created a research capability that taught me about behavioral science. I left there to start Limbic Brand Evolution to create this approach to brand strategy that we've been talking about. And I enjoy questioning the status quo, and I enjoy sharing what I've come up with, what I've learned from other people. I enjoy putting it out there in a way that could help other people. So when thinking about launching my company, it wasn't just about going out and being a freelance brand strategist. It was about creating a brand with a point of difference, creating a brand that leveraged my unique knowledge and insights about behavioral science, understanding that brand leaders would want and benefit from having that insight themselves. And I realized that while I've worked with a couple dozen clients since I launched my company, I could get a lot more information out to help brand leaders and other consultants and maybe even evolve this industry a little. To me, that was exciting. It was exciting to think that I might be able to have some impact on this industry by accelerating the adoption of behavioral science rooted thinking in brand strategy and marketing. So I decided to commit myself to writing a book on the topic, sharing all the details of what I created and what I do with my clients without fear of people stealing work from me because there's enough work to go around and I can only do so much. So I was like, I'd rather give it away and see the industry potentially evolve as a result than keep it a secret so I can do it privately with two or three clients at a time.
I think that's incredibly powerful. And I know you have, right? I've heard from people, even anecdotally, that have read your book. And I'm like, oh, he's actually going to be on the
Oh
podcast.
my God. Oh, that's fantastic. I love knowing that. There's one other piece to it too. It's that I grew up in the larger side of the business. I worked for large companies. I've consulted with the largest companies out there. This book makes this information accessible to medium-sized and small business owners and brand leaders who don't necessarily have access to what I'll call like big company, big agency resources. So that was another reason, which is to really get it out there to people who might benefit from it without having the resources to do it. So I'm so glad to know that you've heard that from people. That's pretty cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I was actually just at an event and someone was talking about, because I asked this kind of icebreaker question as part of my workshop, was the top books that you've read, 3 books you've read in the past year that you would recommend, and yours came up.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That you just made my day. Thank you. That's fantastic.
I love it. Speaking of the book, I know that you've probably lit some light bulbs for people today, right? Sparks
Yeah.
have gone off. we'll include your links where, where people are watching or listening to this episode. But if people were going to go one place to connect with you after today, what do you think is the best place to reach out to learn more, to connect with you, Kevin?
Yeah, so the one singular place to go where you can go anywhere from there is branddesirebook.com. So branddesirebook.com is a page on my website. It shares all the details about the book, what's inside, who's endorsed it, some Amazon reviews are showing up there, where to purchase it, where you can get a discount code, all that. It's also a page on my website. So at the very top of the page, there's a Meet with Kevin link. If anybody wants to meet with me, click and schedule a meeting, and you can flip to other pages that talk more about the work I do with my clients.
Amazing. Thank you so much for spending this time with us and for sharing your knowledge with our audience. Any parting thoughts that you've got, any kind of last minute sticky note writer downers that people definitely need to be remembering from today?
Yeah, I do. This one question, how do you want people to feel? How do you want people to feel? And that should be rooted in how they want to feel. Understand how people want to feel, and then make that happen in the way your brand goes out into the world.
Amazing. All right. All of you write that down and get ready to answer it. So thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate you being our special guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Terrific. And for all of you who are watching and listening to this episode, if you found value in today, share this with a friend, send the link over to your biz bestie, your colleagues, your boss, whoever you know could value or benefit from the value that Kevin shared with us today. Subscribe and get notified about our next expert coming through in this series here on Sticky Note Marketing. And I'll see you on the next episode.